Welcome to the Corporate Hangover. I am your host, Tiffany Kennedy, and today we are excited to have Roxy Ayaz on the show. Roxy is a multi talented front end developer, and she is the creative force behind Paper in the City Shop, which is a South Asian greeting card company that's all about bold, bright, and expressive designs. Right now, Roxy is in between developer jobs and she's working towards her dream of growing Paper in the City Shop into something much bigger. She's here to share her thoughts on how the 9 to 5 system can sometimes stifle your creativity, and it can sometimes really just hold us back from achieving our creative dreams and sometimes our financial freedom. So, if you've ever felt stuck between chasing your dreams or the stability of a paycheck, this conversation is for you. I'm going to also tell you something. You're probably also going to want to check out her shop on Etsy. It's paperinthecity.etsy.com. So go over there, see her amazing work. And I think with that said, I don't want to take too much of the glory away from you, Roxy. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's really exciting because I have a little bit of creativity or some semblance of creative passion in me, but I can really relate to how it can be a little bit stifled. So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and just kind of what got you on the on this journey?
Yeah, so I don't know how to share, but there's two sides of me. There's a side of me that is a developer. So I have about 10 years of experience, actually, both as a buyer and as a front-end developer, mostly working for e-commerce companies. I've worked for like Macy's, Elf Beauty, Walt Disney World, and most
Wow.
recently J. Jill. So I have a lot of corporate work in my under my belt and my resume, but there's a passion I have outside of that, which is a passion I've had my whole life, and that's greeting cards. Everyone that knows me gets a greeting card at some point in their life from me. Some of these cards can take 30 minutes to make, some of them can take over 2 hours.
Oh,
So
wow.
I'm spending a lot of time. It's almost my love language. And in 2022, so the 2 years ago, or sorry, 2023, I decided I wanted to take this farther. I'm like,
Yeah.
I want to expand this. I want other people to experience the joy of getting something incredibly personal. But I need to do that digitally. I'm sorry, I can't spend 2 hours on every single card. So I decided to make my own greeting card company with digitally designed products. I have about like 80 greeting cards, and they are really incredibly specific. So if someone gets
Wow.
a card from me, it is specifically for you, like very specifically for you. And that's what it's about for me. It's specifically for you.
I love that. I love that. And I would love to hear like so you talked about just hey, that's kind of your love language. And I can imagine at some point in your corporate career, you might have said, you know what? I this is something that I enjoy doing. Maybe it's something that I'm probably going to want to take a step further. What was that aha moment for you where you realized, okay, I might want to grow this into something more than something I do on the side?
So it is my job that has helped me become more confident in design. So as a front end developer, most of my responsibilities have been to take the designs from the creative team and then just bring them to life. So
Yeah.
I'm not exactly changing anything. I'm just making things look in some cases pixel perfect. Like these people would be nitpicky. They'd be like, no, this isn't aligned correctly, or this is too
Yeah.
high, this is too low. That's really hard to do as a developer because you are creating very responsive pages that look good no matter what screen someone's using. All
Mhm.
to say, I was busy touching a lot of like Photoshop, and which I have self-taught myself growing up anyways, but I never felt comfortable in a professional setting because I never went to art school. But I
Oh,
think
wow.
once I started working with people who did go to art school, who did think that way, I started to catch on to design principles, to colors, to also like things that people use to develop web pages and other graphics. And I thought, hey, I actually can do this. And I was like, you know what, why do I always think I don't have enough? I think there's something like about, especially as a developer, imposter syndrome. Like the
Oh,
technical
yeah.
field is big out there. And I don't have a computer science degree. I actually have a business degree. So I studied finance and advertising, and then working in e-commerce for a little bit as a buyer for a couple years, 2, 3 years. Then I did a coding boot camp and then switched to tech. So, unfortunately for me, I'm one of those people who always has imposter syndrome. And so it's always like, "Ah, I'm not like that traditional candidate. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know, like, I don't know what I don't know." But when it came to starting this business, I actually started it um to not make fun of myself. So the first year that I started it, I said I'm going to just use this as a way. My New Year's resolution is to learn a new skill, which is to digitally design these products instead
Sure.
of hand designing all the greeting cards I've made. So I'm going to digitally teach myself how to do this with what I already know. And then
Mhm.
I'm going to donate all proceeds to orphans in Pakistan, which is where I'm from. So
Oh,
I was like,
wow.
you know what? If anyone wants to give me a pity sale, I'll take it, because the last thing I wanted with my imposter syndrome is somebody to tell me that, oh, this isn't aligned correctly. These colors you picked are not it. But, after a year of doing it, and I'll say the best feeling I have is when strangers buy my cards. I love friends and
Yeah.
family supporting me, and they do, but there's something about a stranger looking at your stuff amidst everything else on Etsy and everything else out there and buying your thing. That's the biggest flex out there to me.
I'm gonna say that number one, imposter syndrome, 100%, I get it because you always feel like there's something lacking in you, and a lot of times we just kind of build this up in our head, and we are always our own worst critic, and we tell ourselves, "You're not as good as the person next to you, you're not as fast, you're not as smart, you're not as" whatever, you can plug in any word, and most times it's just kind of us standing in our own way.
Yeah.
And for you to not only take that and say, you know what, I'm going to take this thing that I struggle with and I'm going to essentially turn part of this into a positive too. And the work that I make, regardless of whether or not I feel like an imposter, number one, I'm going to just leverage the tools that I have available. And I'm going to sit in on those conversations. I'm going to shadow. I'm going to watch other people. I'm going to, pick up pieces where I can and then turn around like your taking your proceeds and then donating that to a charity or to people that are in genuine need, it's just kind of like it feels like it breaks down part of that too, right? Because
Mm.
now you're giving yourself the permission to do or to just go into the mode that you're most comfortable with because at the end of the day, there's a positive outcome from it. And the last part to your point is yes, it is hard to then feel like an imposter when someone that you don't know is not is actually
Mhm.
investing in your business, right? Of course, when you first start something up, you tell your friends and you tell your family and you're hoping that they're not supporting you just, because they love you. But you're
Mhm.
absolutely right. When someone else says, I love what she's done so much that I'm going to purchase it, that makes a huge difference. So let me ask you this as a follow up. Do you deal with imposter syndrome as an entrepreneur? Have you found any part of that leaking or carrying over into this part of your life? Or has it solely been in the course of working as a front end developer?
I would say, I experience it less. And I think
Okay.
it's because I don't really get feedback. Honestly, you don't get any feedback. It's very much like you make what you make. Um, but I think I am just naturally a creative person and I make these bold cards.
Hmm.
So there isn't really anything like the way that I've made things out there. So I absolutely don't feel like an imposter. I kind of create them exactly how I want them to be. So
Yeah.
there isn't someone I'm copying. I think the thing with imposter syndrome is there's a goalpost for you. There's a specific person that you're supposed to be like. It might be a
Fair.
coworker, it might be somebody else out there that you met like 2 years ago, but you're like, "I need to be more like him." Like, look at him moving up every 2 years, and then why am I still here? Why am I not like a senior developer yet? Why am I doing this? But in this case, I have no examples, and
Yeah.
I think that's good because I'm not beating myself over where I'm at, but I'm also getting to do whatever I want.
I
And I
love
think
that.
that's the best feeling in the world, because I mean, why would you throw something away? Like, why would you throw not throw, but why would you not work a very stable, sometimes mundane 9 to 5 job to then take on more stress? It's already stressful running a business, but then on top of that, if you're going to beat yourself up over for it, I mean, where are you going to
Yeah.
go? You might as well go
Yeah.
back.
Yeah, 100%. And so you hit on something else that I really like because a lot of times you'll get onto social media and you'll have someone that tells you, "Hey, I built this business, this seven-figure business in a matter of 3 days, 36 hours. And,
Mhm.
I'm an overnight rock star. And I think you and I both know that that is not the case, especially as you're transitioning from your 9 to 5 job. Like you just said, you have all that stress. Now you're finding pockets of time at the end of your day to balance life and
Mhm.
still build on an idea. What are your thoughts on that? What do you think when
Yeah.
you see like, "Oh, I built this business in 36 hours?"
I I will say those videos that you see on YouTube, like, "Oh, I made like 10K a month just from print on demand Etsy shops," which for anyone who doesn't know, print on demand is where you're not holding on to any of the inventory. As soon as a customer purchases something, this other company will just take on that order, print that image on a t-shirt for you and send it to the customer. So you literally can be all the way in Timbuktu and your business is running. So they promise you that with zero energy, like they're like making designs like in 2 to 3 minutes and making 10K. And you watch these, and I'm not gonna lie, I was like, wait, this is a great side hustle. So I would look into that, but I'm gonna be honest, there's video after video after video, and I really don't think that's realistic for most people. I I don't think it's realistic, and I think once as long as you can, like, understand that most successful people sometimes have a little bit of a slower start, or
Yeah.
sometimes they have a slow year 1, year 2, and then year 3 is, like, big,
Mhm.
like, you have to just keep going, but yeah, of course, I went into the clickbait. Clicked.
And I can see and I can understand because you get someone that's probably really charismatic just telling you, oh, it's just as easy as that.
Mhm.
But you just hit the nail on the head, which is, it might take, 3 years before you even see any kind of return on your investment, right? Sometimes you're just kind of pouring and pouring and pouring into your business, and you're working the long hours, the late
Mhm.
nights, the sacrifices of I'm not gonna go to this event right now because I need to design, or I need to pour into myself and maybe build my
Yeah.
skill set. And it's not reasonable to then kind of put out there that it's almost a little irresponsible in a way, because you sell this false dream to people who
Mhm.
really are looking for a way to either supplement their income or to then fire, which is financial independence, retire early, or even just kind of get to the point where maybe maybe they're not looking to do either one of those, but maybe there is some gratifying aspect in terms of I just want to work for myself. And
Mhm.
it's not just that rainbow bridge that you
No.
kind of cross over, and now it's just kind of a 1, 2, 3. So I love that you hit on that, because there are challenges that you're going to face. And so I'm curious, because again, there are going to be challenges when you decide I'm going to grow this business. You mind sharing some of the first year challenges that you faced
Oh,
with Paper
so
in the City
many.
shop?
There's so many challenges. Well, the I would say the biggest challenge I have is, so paper in the city is like year 1, year 2, now it's year 3. But
Awesome.
the other part of me, which is a developer, has about like 10 years of experience. So the way people treat me as a developer is very different as somebody who is, let's just say, a no name out there. And so as a no name, it's like coming out there with nothing out there. Like no one
Hmm.
respects you. It's what I'm gonna say. So I remember like so if like I've reached out to some brands, some like other South Asian brands, and of course you'll get a lot of people not responding to your messages, but the ones that do will be like, you have to work for free. And that's just the situation across the board. And they will very flat out say, well, we have a platform, like, well, we have 300,000 followers, and, maybe you can have some of your stuff at one of our events and maybe you'll get some sales there. And they kind of say that, but it's funny that one of those big brand companies, sorry, that say you need to work for free are the ones who say, "Hey, who wants to volunteer for our events? It's a paid opportunity." And they're giving people 75, 100 just to show up to these events and just, help facilitate some mingling. And I'm thinking, wow, the value is so small. And that's what it is. And so you spend all this time coming up with like creating pitch decks, you're mocking up card designs for them, this and that, all for them to often ghost you. That's
Yeah.
the thing. Like they'll work and then say, "Hey, we're gonna pivot. We're gonna take a break for the summer," and then all that work is gone. Or I remember there was this one time, I reached out to someone. He's he helps Muslim entrepreneurs get to where they need to be. So we
Mhm.
did a quick call, and he said, "You know what? I have these friends who run like a Muslim mommy podcast. Like you should get on there. Your target market is very similar to their listeners." So I book a Calendly with them, and they
Mhm.
don't show up every single time or they cancel every single time. And so I think it was like about the seventh time it happened. And I remember like having my makeup on, just staring at Zoom and no one's showing up. And I
Oh,
was like,
wow.
it's very obvious they don't want to do it. It's just like their friend told them, hey, you should connect with Roxy as a guest for you. But the disrespect would never happen if I was interviewing for a front end job, a senior
Yeah.
front end developer role. That would absolutely not happen. Or that wouldn't happen if my business was called Hallmark or Papyrus. But it's happening because it's paper in the city, something nobody knows. And it's yeah, it's rough. It's full of a lot of rejection. It's almost like you're modeling.
And to your point, it's like you have to have that tough skin. But I I kind of want to ask you. So you hit on value, right? And people have to value and respect. And so,
Mhm.
are there any things that you do differently now to ensure that that vendor or whomever you're working with actually has some skin in the game or actually shows that kind of respect to your business? Or what do you do to safeguard and make sure that your value is protected?
So that is a very tough question, but I will
Sure.
say that my first job out of college, I was a buyer, which for anyone who doesn't know, my first job was at Macy's as a buyer. So I was working, again, still in corporate, but I was purchasing the products that Macy's was selling to all of their customers at all their stores and also on their website. So I had a lot of people find my email, LinkedIn me, my company, my boss, my team that were just like me, no names, just ambitious people. Some of them are, I'm not ready. I'm not, again, I'm imposter syndrome. I'm not comfortable enough to say to a Target or Macy's, "Hey, have my stuff," because I don't think
Hmm.
I'm there yet. And but there are a lot of people who are kind of like cold calling, cold emailing you.
Yeah.
And I remember, I'm going to be honest with you, we were not responding to anybody. Not because we were mean, but usually when someone reached out to us, it's so bad. It's so bad. But it's kind of like your first job is the hardest to get once you have experience.
Yeah.
People trust you. Same thing. One of the first questions that my manager, who was like the head buyer, would ask, where else are you selling? And if they said we're selling at Target, Bloomingdale's, Nordstrom, like any of the competitors, boom, you are like 90% likely to be added on as a vendor
Oh, wow.
at Macy's. So it's your first step. It's like your first job, it's your first contract, it's your first. And so I know how it is. Like
Yeah.
that's the question. They're gonna say, "Hey, how many units are you selling a year? How many this, how many that?" But even more important than that, it's,
Hmm.
"Hey, if the target buyer saw it in you, we see it in you. If the Amazon buyer saw it in you, we see it in you." They don't care how you made it there, whether it was connections, whether you know the CEO, they don't care. And it's just that simple. So I
Wow.
am aware of like where I stand right now as a company. And I
Right
take it
on.
like a champ because hey, I was on the other side once.
Fair enough. And then you mentioned that you have done the work of creating pitch decks for your business. Would you recommend that first year entrepreneurs kind of start there, or what path would you lay out? And it's just we're not holding your feet to the fire or anything like that, but I would love for someone that's looking to enter the creative space, regardless of their background, what are some simple things that they can do to start positioning themselves to have those conversations?
Yeah, so I think pitch decks are usually more important for people who are trying to get some type of funding, money, investments. In that
Yeah.
case, I wasn't. I'm interchangeably using the word pitch decks as in, hey, work with me. These are some cards I designed. These are the specifications of them, the sizes, the quality, like glossy, matte, whatever.
Hmm.
But I do think that like the true word, the true phrase or creating a pitch deck is for people who are trying to do that. I will add, I think the way men and women, tell me your thoughts, but I feel like the way men and women often approach businesses, and
Hmm.
sometimes even the businesses they go into are so different. And I say this because I was talking to a guy friend like a year ago, And I was telling him, I said, "Hey, this is what I'm doing. Like, what do you think?"
Yeah.
And I was like, give me it straight," because he's very into like the whole scene about the whole startup scene. And he's like,
Okay.
"I think your thing is a hobby. I don't think it can get there." And I was like, "Why?" And he's like, "Well, the thing is," and I was like, "Tell me why. What's the deal?" And he's like, after some digging, he said the US is a like it's more about services. The money is in services. You can make more money like waitressing than you can selling something. You can make more money cleaning houses. You can probably make 50, 60 an hour cleaning people's houses than creating something like a paper product from scratch that can take a long time to get there. You can probably start cleaning and then start adding on to your team, and just next thing you know, you're this big whole agency.
Mhm.
And hard to hear, but he is totally right. The US is a service-based economy, and that's where the money's at, and I am more so doing something that's a product. And on top of that, I will also say that a lot of men, I feel like they go into when they start a business, a lot of times they try to get into that startup side, which is very
Mhm.
different from what I am. I'm in the small business side. Small business, and I hate
Fair.
using the word small business because it says you're going to stop there. You're always going to be small, but and the startup is like, oh, there's so much potential.
The
But
sky's the
my
limit.
business at this point, I know, of course, and but yeah, the thing with small business is that there's not a lot of help for you out there. So if you look
Yeah.
into having a startup, which is your product is a technical product, there are so many accelerators that can like really help you take an idea that's kind of at the prototype stage,
Mhm.
really skyrocket. Like at the stage I am with my small business, if I was at that stage with a startup,
Mhm.
I would be like 2 years ahead in funding. Like we all see these stories where some guy just created an app within a year. Like there's some guy, he created, I think, Style app within, I think, a year or so he sold it for 7 figures already.
Yeah.
And this is like a
Yeah.
college kid, and he's just confident. And I remember in the comments on his TikTok, people are like, "Hey, question. I think you're a straight guy. Why are you creating a fashion app for like women? What's the deal there?" And the difference is I think a lot of times men go where the money is and women go where their passions lie. And I think we really need to like I say this as if I'm listening to myself, but I think we need to find a way to merge this together to really make it work for us, because the point of this podcast and the point of what we're doing is we're trying to really replace our 9 to 5 salary
Yeah.
into doing something that we love and are truly proud of what we're doing. We're not, oh, we left money on the table, but hey, we're happy. No,
Yeah.
we're not. We're not happy. We're not happy if our sales are 5K a year, but we used to make like 6 figures. That's not,
That's fair.
there's a part of us that isn't going to feel good. That's like we live in a capitalist society. The way people look at you when they interact is often, hey, what do you do for work? That's the second
Yeah.
question. And if, yeah, sure, if you say, hey, I started Meta, don't worry, you don't have to be a corporate guy anymore. But
Yeah.
if you'd say, "Oh, I have this, like, it's got, like, a couple 100 followers," no.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's not as impressive as
People
saying,
don't,
"Hey,
yeah.
I'm a lawyer, I'm a this, I'm a that," you know?
Exactly. And you made a good point, and I think this is something I would love to dive into. I'm not going to present myself as the expert in any way, shape, or form, but I do think there is a difference in the way that men and women approach even corporate America, right? Like I would dare say I feel very confident that I can ask maybe 10 women in a room and say how many of you have dealt with imposter syndrome. And I think the overwhelming majority would say that they have questioned whether or not they belong there, whether or not they're capable,
Mhm.
whether or not they're competent. I've and to the men there out there listening, this is no way a bash against you. It's just kind of having that discussion. If I went into another room and asked another 10 men, I dare say many would probably have the approach of no, I deserve this and then some. Right. And I wonder
Mhm.
also too how much it has to do with how we were brought up. I come from a Caribbean family, and so there are things I've said even as a young child of, hey, here's what I want to do when I grow up. And it's kind of like, no, you're going to funnel you into this, or, you need to
Yeah.
be not even, no joke or anything, no, that's, you need to probably be focused on when you grow up and get married and have children. And it's just kind of like, yeah,
Mhm.
but it's good to dream. And so even
Mhm.
those kinds of experiences shape whether or not we think we belong in a specific room or a situation or a circumstance. And that is such a good point. Another part about it too is kind of, yeah, going where the money is. And I dare say sometimes it comes down to even knowing what those resources are and where to go, because as a entrepreneur and really as a solopreneur, if we don't want to use the term small business, you're wearing so many different hats, and you're
Yeah.
wearing you're wearing the hats. You're performing so many different things. You're learning so many different things, how to do this, how to do that, how to keep the business afloat, that it's kind of like now it's one more thing that you need to go and figure out. If you don't have those people around you or those resources around you to help shape what that trajectory of your business should look like. So that
Yeah.
is absolutely a great point, and I'm glad that you made.
Yeah, I was just looking at this like local Facebook group I'm in, and
Yeah.
some Pilates is big these days. So I remember the other day someone said, and it was of course the guy, "Hey, I'm opening up a Pilates studio. We're looking for an instructor, a manager, this and that." And I'm just thinking, do you even know Pilates? Have you even taken a single class, or do you just know the money's in there at this particular moment?
He's like, no, but I
And
stayed at a Motel 6.
I see, I, as a woman and just the way that I've been raised, like I just wouldn't even think to dabble into something that I haven't done.
Yeah.
You know, I
Yeah.
just, it's such a, there's a lot of confidence that I think in general, a lot of women
That's a
are
good
lacking. I
way.
think a lot of women in color are lacking. I mean, as a South Asian, I was raised in a very critical household, as have a lot of my South Asian friends.
Yeah.
And we just usually don't think we're up for the challenge.
Yeah.
We just
I
don't.
can relate. Yeah. Great point. Great point. So I'm going to pivot a little bit. And so we talked a bit about the challenges, and I'm sure we can go on and on and on. But there's a lot of meat in there as well. And so just kind of being mindful as you're getting ready to step out into, your first couple of steps into entrepreneurship, just being mindful of that. But also, what have been some of the rewarding or the most rewarding moments that you've had since launching your business?
Yeah, the most rewarding business, most rewarding aspect every single time for me, and it never gets old, is when someone who doesn't know me buys a card. And that to me means like you have so many options. I
Yeah.
know, like on the internet, like you have so many options, and you chose a card from me. Most of my customers are also women. They're Gen Z millennial women. But every
Mm-hmm.
once in a while, I'll see a guy's name on a card, and I'm like, oh, thank God. Like we're shifting
Yeah.
because the more people within this very specific niche that are looking at what I'm doing is making it even better. But on top of that, to me, the most rewarding thing is, to be honest with you, it's actually more of a personal thing. It's not
Oh,
seeing like the numbers grow or anything. It's more so like when my contract ended earlier this year, no, if I didn't have this business, I'd be like,
hmm.
what am I doing with my life? I've got this isn't working out, this isn't working out, I'm unemployed. But because I have this, I'm like, you know what, there is more to me because I
Yeah.
think there was a like in the past, just a few years ago, I remember I was also unemployed and I was really not feeling good about myself because I'm like, what do I have to show for myself? Like I'm nowhere I expected to be, like financially, professionally. I have nothing cool about me. I have no it factor to me.
Yeah.
But now I think that I have a purpose. I have something special about me that no one can take away. It's not me opening a franchise. It's very, very specific, very unique, and very personal. And I have seen like someone copy one of my designs before, but it looked so bad. And I'm like, you can imitate, but you can't replicate. Go ahead.
I love that.
And
Go
that
ahead,
was,
Roxy.
and it's a flex. It's a flex to see someone, try to copy you because it means they really liked it enough. But it's nice to say you have something of your own. But to add to your question, what was really
Yeah.
interesting is the other day I picked up a book and it was about manifestation. And one of the exercises was creative visualization. And so that night, this is just like a week ago, I went to bed and I practiced one of these, which is you're going to visualize what you want. And so I decided to kind of think, you know what? Like, I want to wake up and have orders. I want to have orders in my sleep. I want to make money in my sleep. And I
I
got
love
really
that.
specific when I was saying this. I was like, you know what? I want to go out to lunch, dinner, and not have to look at the price of everything and be able to afford something. I want to know that,
Mm,
hey, I'm not wasting time here at this dinner or this. I'm making money as we speak, right?
I love
Because
that.
and so I was very serious about that. And I just went to bed. And then I woke up and I was so mad at myself. I was so mad because I slept in. This is what happens when you don't have a job. You don't have that 10:30 meeting, stand up. So I slept in and I was so mad. I was like, it's 11:20. I cannot spend my days like this. I should have gone to the gym. But you know what? I checked
What?
my phone and I had some sales. I had so many sales that day, and they just kept coming as I'm running errands and this and that. None from any friends, all from strangers. And I was like, does manifestation really work? What is going on? And that was the best feeling. I'm just going and doing my Amazon returns, and I got a sale or that and that. And it was the best feeling to be like, I'm going to come home and pack these orders so they go out tomorrow.
I love
Fun.
that. So it sounds like manifestation, but also a little grace when, maybe you didn't do
Mhm.
exactly what you wanted to do. Give yourself a little bit of grace.
Exactly. I
Yeah,
needed
I
to sleep
love
a little
hearing
to
that.
get that sale because that sale happened at 10:40. So I couldn't have woken, I wouldn't have made money in my sleep if I woke up on time.
Exactly, exactly that. I'm going to ask you for that book information later on.
Yeah.
And so I heard you mention that you're also transitioning in between roles. Has that transition had an impact or change in your perspective for how you think about paper in the city? So I know you mentioned that, hey, it gave you a sense of purpose, right? And
hmm
you feel like you're walking towards your purpose. Were there any moments where that perspective might have shifted?
I feel like this is what I want to do. This is what
Right
makes me
on.
happy. I am somebody who loves to actually wear all the hats in a company. And that's actually what I love about what I do is I get to touch the marketing, touch the strategy, touch the
Yeah,
design, touch the product. I get to do it all. And that's actually why my resume has so many like different companies, different
yeah.
roles. It's because I always have this itch, like this is my thing. Like I told myself even before I started corporate life that I'm going to learn through doing this. Like, I want to get paid to learn. If you see, there's always two purposes to everything I do. So that's the trend. But I was like, I want to get paid to learn. So basically, what that means is when I feel like I've stopped learning in the role that I'm in, um,
Mm-hmm.
instead of being like what a lot of people do, they'll be like, hey, I want a promotion or I want to change in title. I would often see what that role was and be like, it's not going to be that different. You usually already know what your boss does and you're capable of it. You're just not taking on that role yet, right? So I would see that and I'd be like, taking my boss's job in a year isn't that aspirational. How about I move to a different company, see
Hmm.
how things work? And so in that way, I've worked at both companies, large and small, and worn different hats in that way, but I've never been able to have a role where I get to touch all the things that I like to. And so
Yeah.
that's what I love about this business is because there are some days where all I want to do is design, design, design. Like it's like 2 a.m. Your creative juices are flowing and you're designing. But then there's
Mm-hmm.
other days where you're like, no, let me just spend some time reaching out to brands or doing this, doing that.
Yeah.
And being able to do that is like to me truly the most creative thing out there. So, I mean, if it was up to me, I would love to do this like full time. I would love to see it grow. I don't think this business is anywhere near its capacity, and I'm really hoping that like I see some progress soon enough so that I can like try to even delay getting a full-time job, or if I have to, I have to. We'll see. Gotta pay the bills too.
I totally agree and I understand. So Roxy, when you think about where you anticipate being in the next 5 years, what is something that you think your future self would tell your current self?
Oh, that's tough. I think my future self, that's tough. Because you don't know what you don't know right now, but I would think my future self,
Manifest.
I know, my future self would probably tell her to do the work, but leave the worrying to God. Just leave the worrying out of it because Well, it's funny. I was talking to my friend about this, and she was, trying to achieve something,
Hmm.
and she had done so much work in every single aspect, every single area you can think of. This girl had it covered, but what she wanted wasn't coming through. And I
Yeah.
said, you know what? Like, God heard you. Like, you have been heard. You are doing everything at max capacity.
Yeah.
Spend your time doing that and don't spend time worrying. And so it's funny, like sending her that voice note the other day made me think I need to implement that too. Who am I? Some guru who practices not what she preaches. So
It's harder to take it from ourselves, absolutely.
I know it's so easy to throw out advice, but that's what I want to do. I just want to do the work and then leave it up. And I've recently been talking to other people. Like I went to this
Hmm.
vision board making event and I was talking to this woman who's a real in real estate, and she like was just telling me how like strict she is with her time. She says, I just lock myself in the room and I just like tell myself I'm gonna straight make 30 phone calls. No, like I'm not gonna be attached to the outcome. Like I'm just gonna work on something for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And those are some habits that I've already been picking up, not only
Mm.
from her, but I also was like, that's a good idea. You just give yourself time to design, give yourself time to post on your social media, whatever it is, and just leave it.
Yeah.
Like you have to do the work. You can't sit there and think and think and think yourself into unhappiness.
Yeah. I love that. It's kind of like you can see where you need to be, but you also have to take the action, right? Like thoughts
Yeah.
without action, it's dead. Faith without action is dead. And so
Hmm.
I love that. I mean, I feel like I'm just picking up just a little nugget here and there as you're speaking, and it's as much as you're saying it for yourself, I'm getting something from it as well because we always have to just remember it's the consistency. It's just taking those steps forward and forward. And even though you might not see anything right this moment, you don't know the minute that you decide to walk away from your passion or from your vision, it might just be that one additional step that you needed to take that you
Yeah.
didn't. And that right around the corner is the valley, the meadow, and it's
Yeah.
green and lush, and you just didn't take that step. And so the consistency, like you said, is really what matters, and just keep pushing forward. So you mentioned that you like to learn, you like to get paid to learn,
Hmm.
but what is something or what's the most important lesson that you've learned since starting Paper in the City?
I learned that resilience is the most important thing. I did, get into making an Etsy shop and making and designing digitally, I'll be honest, because of those
Hmm.
clickbait videos that are all over TikTok and YouTube.
Yeah.
But I learned very early on that that's not really how it works.
Yeah.
And I really think, however, the more time I spend on my business, the more like return I see. And it's something I'm still at the moment trying to figure out. Like, do I need to make more cards? Is there a card out there that people are looking for that I'm just missing the mark?
Hmm.
Or is the strategy supposed to be something different or something else? And that's kind of like where I'm kind of struggling.
Yeah.
The thing is when it's just you, you're very attached to it, especially when it's a creative product, like when
Yeah.
it's writing or art, you take criticism a little personally. You
It's your
take,
baby.
you're living in it, you're living in it. And so you don't see what someone easily in 5 minutes could hear about your business and be like, why aren't you doing that? And you're like, oh, I don't know. I
Yeah.
was too busy making a TikTok about my business. So you just, I don't know. That's the thing. You don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Roxy, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. If there's one parting word that you can leave with listeners that are thinking about starting their journey, what would it be?
I would say, from my experience, if you don't take a risk in your design or your execution of the plan, you may not get anywhere. And I say this because when I first started out, I was trying to figure out which cards would work for me. And of course, I'm the person who makes whatever she wants to make and
Hmm.
other people can go buy it. But there was a point where I was like, let me expand my collection, let me expand the assortment. And so I went on Etsy and saw what other people were making. Like for example, wedding, like so there's a lot of traditional like Western American wedding cards out there. So I
Hmm.
said, let me take this and make like a little tweak to it because this is the bestseller on Etsy. Let me just make it South Asian. Guess what? That was
What?
not the bestseller for me.
Okay.
And so copying or whatever you want to call it doesn't work for me. Same for so yeah, so just because it works for someone else, it probably won't work for you, especially if your audience is incredibly like different and very diverse. And
Yeah.
I will also say, even in my experience, like when I've made TikToks for my personal account before,
Hmm.
every time I tried to play it safe, or every time I kind of like, it's not even copy, but it's like a lot of
Yeah.
creators, they copy each other. But anytime that I said something that was already said, it wouldn't have like, it'd be like, what do you mean this girl said the same thing I'm saying, but nobody cares to hear me say it. And you know what it is? Like the more out there you are, whether it's with your designs, with what you're saying, your opinions, your actions, I think the more people resonate with that, especially I think as a small business, like you are already kind of buried in there.
Yeah.
You have to shine. The way that people like pick that card or pick that is if you're really standing out because there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of people that are, I don't, not to be mean, but at your level. And so how do you stand out? You have to really speak to someone's soul, and that has to be a very specific way. And the only way that you can do it is not by copying. Because the thing is if you're copying, they're just going to get it from the top listing on Etsy.
Exactly.
They're not going to get to the point where they see your version of that card, your little
Exactly.
twist where you made it red and pink and she had it blue, baby blue and white. It's not going to work.
And to your point, it's what makes you uniquely you. Same thing like when you're in your everyday role, right? We have something called your proposition. What is
Hmm.
it that you are going to solve for that customer? And being your genuine to yourself is a great first step. A
Hmm.
great first step. Well, Roxy,
Absolutely.
why don't you tell us where we can find you?
So you can obviously go to my Etsy shop, which is paperinthecity.etsy.com. Then I have an Instagram account, which is at Paper in the City Shop. And then you can also find me on TikTok with the same handle, which is Paper in
Awesome.
the City.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being a guest on our show today, Roxy. It has been a pleasure speaking with you, and I'm definitely wishing you all the success. You're going to manifest it, you're going to walk into it with your business.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It was great chatting with you.
You as well.